Good morning. We're live now on AOC Community Media, which is on Channel 1, this program in particular today, Cox 15, LUS 3. We're also streaming on Cypress Street Radio. You can go to aocinc.org/CS radio. And, of course, on our YouTube channel, just look us up, AOC Community Media. Whoops. I have the YouTube video open on my other computer. There we go. I think I've got that fixed. We do this program each weekday morning at 9 a.m., Local News Live, where we read with volunteers local and state news from the Acadiana Advocate. I'm Mandy Ayo, joined this morning by our volunteer, Bruce Cohen, who you've heard many, many times here on the program. Good morning, Bruce.
Well, good morning. You're almost where you could have excluded me and done it with yourself.
I was jumping all over the place with it. Did you hear my other computers talking back at us?
Wouldn't that be interesting, though, if you could, work it out to where you read a story and then you read a story?
Yeah, just be two different people. All right.
But we're not going to do that this morning, folks. We're not going to throw a curveball at you. We're going to do our usual broadcast, but we're going to do it like we used to do it in the studio, right? In the podcast booth. So we're going to share stories this morning. So
this is exciting. I'm glad to co-read with you this morning.
It's very exciting. I'm very excited about about doing this. Usually, you read all the stories alone, and you don't have time to sip your coffee or take a break. So this really helps. But it's also enjoyable to read with somebody like yourself. So I will kick things off this morning on Wednesday, October 14th. 2020. Good morning, Acadiana, to Local News Live. LUS gets power restored. Workers share gratitude for acts of kindness by Megan Wyatt. Dustin Viator, a line worker supervisor for Lafayette Utility System, LUS, can't remember the last time he had a day off. And even though crews restored power to all remaining LUS customers on Tuesday, woohoo! The work is far from over. Those guys, I got a break from the news though, but those guys, all those people involved, they do a tremendous job. Those first responders, as far as utilities go, they have been working day and night since August 27th when Laura hit landfall. Those guys are just incredible. I mean, if you see a utility worker, walk up to them and shake their hands. Don't give them a hug, because we're in a pandemic, but shake their hands. Anyway, so let me continue with the story. I had to say that because those people are incredible. Viator has worked from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. each day since Hurricane Delta made landfall, but he was busy long before the storm wreaked havoc on the LUS infrastructure. He and his team had spent the better part of 2 months on the road, helping small utility systems restore power to customers after Hurricane Laura made landfall in southwest Louisiana in August and Hurricane Sally made landfall in Alabama in September. Our families haven't seen us too much, Viator said while breaking from lunch on Tuesday. It's not just my family, it's all lineman families in the whole United States. We got people all through the U.S. and even Canada coming to Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Texas to help out. People are giving up their lives to come help others get back to theirs. Viator lives in St. Martin Parish with his wife and 2 children. He said he's thankful for extended family that has helped out during his absence. Line workers, including Viator, stayed at the Cajun Dome on Friday night during Hurricane Delta and hit the streets about 1 a.m. Saturday to begin power restoration efforts as high winds continue to whip around them. We lost the transmission lines, Viator said. That's why pretty much all of Lafayette went out. We were trying to hook up all of our substations to get some lights back on as soon as possible. It's exhausting work, but sometimes dangerous and oftentimes thankless. That's why it means so much when ordinary people go out of their way to show their appreciation. Children approach workers with freshly baked cookies and thank you notes as the crew worked on Monday. A cookie cake decorated with a line worker awaited out-of-town crews on a hotel on Tuesday. Local and visiting utility workers are also treated to 3 hearty home-cooked meals each day. Sometimes you'll see little kids running up with water, candy, little thank you notes that say, We love you, Lyman, and all of that, Viator said. There's some good stuff. I think there's more good than bad, especially if you stay off of social media. Even offline, Viator and his team sometimes serve as a sounding board for frustrated customers who want their electricity back. Viator said his crew recently had to cut off power in an area soon after restoring it because of a hazardous situation that put a worker's life on the line. One resident became irate and shouted at his team as they were working outside his home. I had to kill the power, and I had to tell him that I'm not killing somebody for your comfort, Viator said. I'm sorry, that's not our job. After long days of manual labor, many workers are returning to homes without power. Viator said most of his line workers live outside of Lafayette and rely on other companies to restore their electricity. They're understanding, of course, because they know well what goes into restoring electricity. Workers must verify that every piece of equipment, from substations and transformers to individual power lines, is in good condition after a major storm. Otherwise, excuse me, a similar storm could rip down a line and catch a home on fire, Viator said. We'd like to thank people for being patient and understanding, he said. We try our best. There are no linemen in this area who are not trying their best, Viator said. In general, he and his team are treated better by residents of other communities than they are while working in their own backyard. Maybe it's because they're more visible in other areas where they sometimes sleep in their vehicles or stay in hotels without electricity. When we go out, people will stop to give us food or thank you notes or things like that. One guy in Alabama gave me cash and I gave it back to him. He started crying. He said, "Don't take away my blessing." I said, "All right, I'll make sure our guys get a treat," Viator said. In Lafayette, though, they normally look at us differently as the home team. They don't seem to think we're doing a whole lot. Now that LUS workers have restored power to all customers, they will work on streetlights and assist smaller communities with their efforts. When you're a small town, you kind of get overlooked sometimes, said Alex Antonoswich, spokesperson for LUS. We end up helping the smaller utility systems for that reason. LUS workers were treated to a parade of sorts while helping out in Vinton after Hurricane Laura. With lights and sirens, fire trucks, and police units led LUS trucks through the Calcasieu Parish community's main stretch, where residents waved and thanked the workers. Now in the aftermath of Delta, the line workers are preparing to travel once more. We're spreading the wealth around to help others, Antonio Switch said. It's not over yet. As of 4:30 p.m. Tuesday, all LUS customers had power restored. About 50,000 of the total 70,000 LUS customers were without power at one point following the storm. Everybody who can have power restored now has power, Antonio Switch said. There may be a few people who remain who need to have work done by an electrician before power can be restored. Sometimes storm debris can affect something at the household level. More than 30,000 customers serviced by other utility companies in Acadiana, including over 7,000 in Lafayette Parish, were still without power as of Tuesday afternoon. There were 16,481 customers without power across Slumco's service area, including 5,300 in Lafayette Parish as of 3 p.m. Tuesday. At the peak, 98% of Slumco's 110,000 customers were without power. There were 13,913 customers without power in Entergy's Acadiana region, including 1,735 in Lafayette Parish as of 4 p.m. Tuesday. At the peak, Entergy Louisiana had 320,000 customers without power.
Wow. Let's see. Let's move on to the next story, also to do with storm damages and outages. Schools are working to reopen. An article by Katie Gagliano. Schools around Acadiana are in various stages of cleanup and repair as districts try to bring schools back online while navigating power outages and damage at campuses and administrative facilities. In Lafayette, most public school students will return to classes Wednesday, though Dussault Elementary and Ernest Gallet Elementary will remain closed because of continued power outages. Lafayette Online Academy students will also resume lessons on Wednesday, district spokesperson Allison Dickerson said. Any Academy students still without internet service should contact their base school to determine the next steps, she said. Charles M. Burke Elementary will only be open to kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 5th grade students. Dickerson said portions of the roof in the school's 3rd grade and 4th grade zones were damaged. The Charles Burke repairs are expected to be finished early next week, and learning materials will be provided for students while they're out of physical class. Dusant Elementary will similarly be supplying printed learning packets to students Thursday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., a district release said. Damage to the electrical grid in Dusant is more extensive, and the school could be without power for several more days, Dickerson said. Families can expect cleanup at many campuses to continue, but the campuses have been secured and safety checks completed for all reopening schools, she said. We've taken care of all the big items, and what we have left now are the aesthetics, the cleanup, minor things that need to be repaired that don't stop learning from happening, Dickerson said. Acadia Parish Public Schools will be closed through the end of the week and are expected to reopen Monday. Superintendent Scott Richard said as of Tuesday afternoon, only 8 of the district's 26 schools had electricity, and many employees and student families remained without power. While the lack of power was a driving factor in the decision to delay, and there were operational and safety needs at the schools, but the district also wants to reduce stress on families dealing with storm damage, Richard said. I think pushing the start of school off until Monday will give us time to assess facilities and get a better handle on the types of damages we have on the interiors of our schools and give people enough time to get in a better place to get kids back in school, he said. Richard estimated 80% of district schools suffered some type of damage from Hurricane Delta, but overall the campuses fared well. The superintendent said he's confident, based on meetings with Acadia Parish's Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness and other officials, that Monday is a reasonable target date. Once returned, the district will work out a plan to address lost instructional minutes. Vermillion Parish Public Schools are aiming for a Thursday reopening for most campuses, but which schools will reopen and whether the reopening date will be pushed back hinges on progress and school assessments over the next 24 hours, Superintendent Tommy Byler said. 3 school campuses remained without electricity Tuesday afternoon. All 12-month employees will return to work Wednesday, and all 9- and 10-month employees will return from 8 a.m. to noon, including teachers, to assess classrooms and determine if they're capable of hosting students. We've already shortened our time with kids so much. I don't want our teachers and kids showing up on the same day on Thursday and the teacher having to spend 2 hours of the day trying to turn in what their internet isn't working or their electrical outlets. I think we have to value our time with the kids, Byler said. While the teachers are assessing classrooms, maintenance crews and hired cleanup teams are working to board up busted windows, while glass and other materials are on back order, haul away damaged or downed awnings, and address roof damage from lost shingles and other wind damage. Notable damage included roof damage at North Vermillion High and roughly 5 blown-out windows at the district's transportation building on Port Street. The district's special education department was relocated from that building over the past 2 days, Byler said. Beside the physical school buildings, virtual education is a main concern, the superintendent said. It's unclear how many students have access to reliable internet. If classes are possible, the plan is to have elementary students return to campuses deemed safe. Middle and high school students in the B group will return, and middle and high school virtual students who have internet access will return, per the Vermillion Parish School System's Facebook page. The St. Landry Parish School System announced Tuesday that students would be making a staggered return to classes. Many schools will reopen Wednesday, but Cankton Elementary, Sunset Middle, Krotz Springs Elementary, Grand Coteau Elementary, Cresswell, Park Vista Elementary, Northeast Elementary, Center for Academic Programs, Opelousas High, Opelousas Middle, Opelousas Junior High, and Growley Elementary will remain closed. The virtual academy for K-5 students will also be closed, a statement from the district said.
Continuing with storm-related news, Hurricane Delta, the wind was devastating. Storm causes about $50,000 damage to Acadiana Animal Aid by Christian Askelson. Kittiana Animal Aid, a nonprofit animal shelter in Lafayette Parish, sustained about $50,000 in damage during Hurricane Delta. Janine Faucher, executive director of the shelter, said they were extremely grateful that no lives were lost to the hurricane, human or animal, but the shelter is facing serious obstacles to its mission of caring for animals until they all have a home. Chris Faucher said of Tuesday morning that he still had no power, just like so many people around Lafayette, Karen Crow, and the surrounding areas. That's especially challenging for the animals who are suffering from illnesses such as ringworm and parvo, she said. This really has a profound impact on our life-saving ability until they are repaired, she said. The storm also destroyed 18 isolation kennels used to quarantine animals before they're allowed to join the shelter's general population. 7 years ago, it cost a nonprofit about $20,000 to build the kennels. That's not something that can be repaired. It will have to be completely replaced, Faucher said. $20,000 is a significant amount of money, but the life-saving that can occur because of the $20,000 makes it absolutely worth it. The kennels also house dogs before they're transported to other no-kill shelters in their new homes. This is something we use on the daily. We've been assisting some of our local shelters who have been evacuating animals for flights. Been able to house them here overnight so they could leave the next day on a flight to get out of here, Faucher said. Several other areas of the shelter also received damage. 2 large trees fell on the shelter's cat cottage. The roof was partially taken off a barn used for storage, and another building was lifted off its foundation. It really had a negative impact for Kittiana Animal Aid. The wind was devastating, Faucher said. The dogs have indoor-outdoor access. The adult cats were moved to the shelter's catio when the building was deemed safe. We had just received $10,000 from the Banfield Foundation to help us purchase a generator, but we believe it will cost us roughly $20,000, Faucher said. So we're not only looking at repairs to the transport kennels, but probably an additional outlay of cash to help us actually get that generator. Okay, Mandy, it's 9:17, so why don't we announce a couple PSAs if you want to take the first one.
All right.
Mosquito control.
Okay, we're definitely having some issues with that after hurricanes. Requests for mosquito control is now available through Lafayette 311, Mosquito Prevention and Safety. Lafayette Consolidated Government is increasing mosquito abatement efforts in the parish following Hurricanes Laura and Delta. An increase in mosquito activity is a common occurrence following a storm event, and citizens noticing an influx in mosquitoes in their area can now use the Lafayette 311 portal to request service. All submitted requests are routed directly to Mosquito Control Services, the mosquito control contractor for the parish. So if you're having issues in your area, please use the Lafayette 311 and report that.
Okay, and also in relation to the pandemic, if you are feeling overwhelmed with stress, fear, and anxiety about the uncertainty surrounding the public health emergency, there is a special Keeping Calm Through COVID hotline you can call. This connects you to trained and compassionate counselors who can offer support and who can direct you to mental health and substance abuse counseling services. Trained counselors are available 24/7 and all calls are confidential. If you feel that you need this help, please call 1-866-310-7977. And locally, you can Stop the Spread call instead, #StopTheSpread. For the latest area COVID-19 updates and information, you can visit 311lafayette.services online, or you can call Centers with Volunteers and Medical Professionals who are active 24/7 to answer your questions about COVID-19 and to determine if you need to get screened. You may also call 311 and press option 2 if you're a business owner, employee, or looking for a job to get information about applying for small business recovery loans, apply for unemployment benefits, and related programs. All right, headed back into our news. Let's see, since you...
Did you want me to take that? The Lafayette City Marshal candidates?
Yeah.
Okay. This is, of course, due to for Lafayette election 2020. Lafayette City Marshal, the candidates tout decades of law enforcement experience. This is an article by Claire Taylor. The four men vying to be the next Lafayette City Marshal come with decades of law enforcement experience and include a former interim Lafayette Police Chief, the Dusson Police Chief, a former Louisiana State Police Trooper, and a former Lafayette Deputy Marshal. Nathan Broussard, Kip Judice, Reggie Thomas, and John Trahan Jr. will be on the November 3rd ballot in Lafayette. The city marshal serves a 6-year term. The office assists with city court hearings, serves warrants, and assists with evictions. C. Michael Hill, an attorney and former federal magistrate judge, has been serving as interim city marshal since October 2018, appointed to replace Brian Pope, the elected city marshal who was convicted of felony malfeasance in office in October 2018. Pope intended to run for re-election, but 2 judges ruled he was ineligible to do so, and last week the Supreme Court refused to hear Pope's appeal. First up,
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mandy, but why don't we take a turns, since this is a long article. Why don't you can take Nathan Broussard and I'll take the next candidate.
Okay.
And then we'll just switch back and forth.
That sounds good. Okay, well, first up in the candidates is Nathan Broussard, who is 54, is the only candidate with 20 years of experience in the city marshal's office, and he was hired by former longtime marshal Earl Nicky Picard and left when Pope won in 2014 and took office the following year. He worked for the Louisiana Attorney General's office and was hired by Lafayette Mayor President Josh Guillory this year as his chief of governmental affairs. Broussard said his experience in the city marshal's office makes him most qualified because he knows the operations and the people. 26 officers who have been through hell and back since the Pope scandal broke. These people went through a lot for one guy's issues, Broussard said. All of the employees are unfairly blamed, he said, for what Pope did. Broussard knows how that feels. He worked for the Scott Police Department in 1996 when Police Chief Jerry Carpenter and 2 other officers planted drugs on Vietnamese shrimpers Broussard stopped on Interstate 10 for a traffic violation. They had $55,000 in cash on them. Broussard's search of the car turned up no drugs, and his dash camera later recorded Carpenter planting evidence. He reported the incident, which led to a state investigation and the conviction of Carpenter for malfeasance in office. It was difficult to find a job in law enforcement after that, Broussard said, and he received death threats. Picard hired him at the marshal's office the day after Carpenter went to jail, he said. Broussard said he knows the employees in the city marshal's office, knows their strengths and weaknesses, and can move them into positions for which they're best suited. The city marshal's office and city court need to use updated technology, Broussard said. Lafayette City Court is the only court system he knows of where you can't always pay a ticket online, an inconvenience and possible health risk during the COVID-19 epidemic. Then you get charged $10 to put the fee on your credit card, he said. When he worked at the marshal's office, Broussard said he developed a system where a person's fingerprint or photo are taken when they are ticketed so that when they show up for court and say they aren't the person ticketed, there's no proof on the ticket. He also would like to bring back a reverse officer program in high schools so students learn how the court system works.
Okay, Kip Judice, 55, retired after working 30 years at the Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office. He ran for city marshal in 2014, receiving 48% of the vote in a runoff against Pope's 52%. Since May 2015, he has worked as the Dusson police chief. I've taken a department in turmoil and stabilized it, he said. I made the Dusson Police Department an agency that's respected. Judice said all employees of the city marshal's office will be retained if he is elected because they delivered quality service despite the Pope scandal. Transparency will be the key if he is elected, Judice said. He will put the office's checkbook online so everyone can track how much money is spent, he said. And he will spend fees in that department, not take them as part of his salary, as Pope has done. Judice hopes to work with city court judges to implement the use of text alerts to remind people ahead of court appearances so judges don't have to issue warrants for officers to pick up people for not appearing in court on misdemeanors, We're incarcerating people for committing traffic violations and misdemeanors, he said, and that's costing the city and costing people their jobs. Judy also wants to work with judges to allow people who fail to show up in city court to complete community service instead of going to jail, where taxpayers feed them and treat illnesses. All the candidates talk about doing things, he said. I'm excited that people have a choice. I'm the one guy that's done it. One of the first things he did in Tucson was set up traffic safety checks in areas known for drug dealing, he said. People who are looking to buy or sell drugs don't like to show their ID and vehicle registration, so the practice reduced the demand for drugs in that town, he said. Working with the town council, Judy's helped implement tougher consequences for juveniles breaking curfews, summoning their parents to court, to which he said had a profound effect. He also reached out to the local clinical psychologist, Rachel Foreman, in 2019 to help training his officers on how to deal with residents suffering mental health crisis after an incident which ended peacefully, but which could have been handled better by his department, Judy said.
Reginald Reggie Thomas, 54, a U.S. Air Force veteran, has 30 years of law enforcement experience, including 11 months as interim Lafayette police chief and 3 years as deputy chief, in which he oversaw the entire department and assisted in preparing the department's $33 million budget. I'm the only candidate that led an agency the size of the city marshal's office or larger, not as a captain, Thomas said. Thomas retired in June after Guillory said he would eliminate the deputy chief's position created by his predecessor, which would have dropped Thomas several levels in the hierarchy of the department. While he was with the city police, Thomas created a community relations committee to meet with department leaders about problems in the community. He also started regular community walks in which police department leaders and officers walked through parts of the city that often view police in a negative way. Those things ended when Guillory took office, and many on the Community Relations Committee quit after Thomas left. He said he wants to rebuild community trust and community relations, which may help convince people to show up for city court and work with officials if they can't pay their fines. One of the first things Thomas said he wants to do is regain accreditation for the office, which was lost under Pope's administration. He testified on behalf of the Lafayette Police Department during its accreditation, in which the department had to meet more than 85% of 400 policing standards, Thomas said, so he is knowledgeable about what is needed. Thomas said he would like to coordinate with the city police in training city marshal deputies so they all do the same things and use the same tactics, so there is coordination when both show up to a crime scene. It would also save money by eliminating a marshal's office position for training, he said. The fees Pope was using to supplement his salary would be used for training, Thomas said. He also plans to write grants to secure additional money for the office. While at the city police department, Thomas said he secured over $2 million in grants for the department. A lot of people have ideas, Thomas said, but I'm proven. Mike Hill, he said, did an excellent job as interim marshal. I'll move it forward, Thomas said.
And finally, John Trahan Jr. Trahan, 54, a U.S. Army reservist activated during Operation Desert Storm, spent 6 years working at the Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office under former Sheriff Don Breaux before joining the Louisiana State Police from 1995 until his retirement in August. Lafayette was a beautiful place to grow up, Trahan said, but the whole community helped, and that's still needed but often lacking today. Children, teens, and adults get into trouble and need help navigating the city court system for misdemeanors, he said. Law enforcement, including the city marshal's office, can play a role, he said. People sometimes simply forget to go to court. Trahan said the marshal's office should be able to use technology to send them alerts about upcoming court dates and when fines are due. Other states, Trahan said, have kiosks where people can pay fines if they aren't able to do so online, as well as apps so people don't have to miss work to go to court. That helps the misdemeanor offender, their employer, and doesn't cause bottlenecks in city court, he said. He said he also won't repeat Pope's second mistake. He'll use fees for training, not to pad his salary. Training is a key, Trahan said, including cultural diversity training and sensitivity training. For people who have never been through the court process, it can be traumatic. We have to be sensitive to that, Chauhan said. His deputies will follow the judge's orders, but should do with sensitivity, not in a bullying manner. City marshal deputies assist landlords with evictions. That's another area they need to approach with sensitivity, Chauhan said, suggesting the office may be able to direct people to nonprofit groups who can help with housing and other needs. Chauhan said he wants his deputies to be out of the community, building relationships with groups and individuals, and he wants to provide them with long and short-term opportunities. If you know somebody cares about you, you're going to do a better job, he said. At the end of the day, John Chauhan Jr. will be there and will be a voice to help people through life like people helped me. Well, I think it's time to go to our half-hour break. Do you want to take the day in history?
Sure. Today, of course, is Wednesday, October the 14th. It's the 288th day of 2020. There are 78 days left in the year. Today's highlight in history: on October 14th, 1964, civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. was named winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. On this date in 1933, Nazi Germany announced it was withdrawing from the League of Nations. In 1944, German Field Marshal Erwin Rommel took his own life rather than face trial and certain execution for allegedly conspiring against Adolf Hitler. In 1947, U.S. Air Force Captain Charles E. Chuck Yeager became the first test pilot to break the sound barrier as he flew the experimental Bell XS-1, later the X-1 rocket plane over Muroc Dry Lake in California. In 1960, the idea of a Peace Corps was suggested by Democratic presidential candidate John F. Kennedy to an audience of students at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. In 1964, Soviet leader Nikita S. Khrushchev was toppled from power. He was succeeded by Leonid Brezhnev as first secretary and by Alexei Kosygin as premier. On this day in 1968, the first successful live telecast from a manned U.S. spacecraft was transmitted from Apollo 7. In 1981, the new president of Egypt, Hosni Mubarak, was sworn in to succeed the assassinated Anwar Sadat. Mubarak pledged loyalty to Sadat's policies. In 2001, as U.S. jets opened a second week of raids in Afghanistan, President George W. Bush sternly rejected a Taliban offer to discuss handing over Osama bin Laden to a third country. On this day in 2014, a second nurse at Texas Health Presbyterian Hospital in Dallas came down with Ebola after contracting it from a dying patient. The nurse, Amber Joy Vincent, was later declared free of the disease. In 2017, a truck bombing in Somalia's capital killed more than 500 people in one of the world's deadliest attacks in years. Officials blamed the attack on the extremist group Al-Shabaab and said it was meant to target Mogadishu's international airport, but the bomb detonated in a crowded street after soldiers opened fire. 10 years ago today, Chile's 33 rescued miners posed with President Sebastián Piñera and were examined by doctors a day after they were freed from their underground prison. 5 years ago, hundreds of soldiers fanned out in cities across Israel, and authorities erected concrete barriers outside some Arab neighborhoods of East Jerusalem in a stepped-up effort to counter a month-long wave of Palestinian violence. And 1 year ago today, President Donald Trump announced sanctions targeting Turkey's economy in response to Turkey's assault against Kurdish fighters and civilians in Syria. The assault had begun after Trump announced that he was moving U.S. troops out of the way. Today's birthdays: classical pianist Gary Graffman is 92 today. Movie director Carol Ballard turns 83. Country singer Melba Montgomery is 83 today as well. Former White House counsel John W. Dean III is 82. Fashion designer Ralph Lauren turns 81 today. Singer Sir Cliff Richard is 80. Singer-musician Justin Hayward of the Moody Blues turns 74 today. TV personality Arlen Sorkin is 65. Singer-musician Thomas Dolby is 62 today. Actor Lori Petty turns 57. Philadelphia Phillies manager Joe Girardi turns 56. Actor Steve Coogan is 55. Actor John Cena turns 50 today. Country singer Natalie Maines of the Dixie Chicks, or the Chicks now, 46 today. Let's see. Actor Stephen Hill turns 44. Singer Usher is 42. TV personality Stacy Keibler turns 41 today. Actor Jordan Brower is 39. And director Ben Zeitlin is 38. That's a look at today in history.
All right, let's move on to the zodiac, or the horoscope, as I like to refer to it as. You Libras out there, take a pass when faced with demands. Choose what makes you happy and don't feel guilty for wanting what brings you joy. Today should be all about you and your priorities. Scorpios, pay attention to detail and you will outshine any challenger. Take a unique approach to life, love, and happiness. A positive change at home will allow you to spend more time fulfilling a goal. Sagittarians, take a moment to mull over sensitive issues. How you treat others will determine how you are willing others are to help you. Do things for yourself and don't rely on anyone for anything. Capricorns, push forward, refuse to let others slow you down, take charge of your destiny and make things happen. Live in the moment, let go of love, the past, and watch opportunities unfold, and romance is favored. Aquarius, concentrate on investments, legal matters, and contracts. Abide by the rules and leave no room for error. Refuse to let others sidetrack you, tempt you to cut corners or take on too much. Pisces, you'll thrive on change, in-depth discussions, and investments. A partnership will enhance how you do things. Love and romance and commitment are favored. Aries, push hard and live up to your promises. Refuse to let anyone's negativity stand in your way. Treat challenges as opportunities to show your worth. Taurus, a change is in your best interest. Refuse to let someone's financial burden become your own. Offer suggestions, advice, and moral support, nothing more. Gemini, think twice before you meddle or gossip. You'll get more than you bargained for if you don't stick to your schedule and take care of responsibilities. Leave well enough alone. Cancer, keep your temper under control to surpass expectations. Don't waste time disagreeing with someone who will never see things your way. Concentrate on relationships. Leos, don't be fooled by someone spouting false information. Stick to your beliefs and choose to put your energy where it will have the most impact. Select your friends and associates wisely. And finally, Virgo, my birth sign. Make a statement, do your part, and support what's best for everyone. Share your feelings and concerns in order to gain peace of mind. Love and romance will enhance your life, and that is true for me. So the horoscope is an entertainment feature. It is not based on scientific fact, folks. Get that straight. The funerals today in the Kenneana area, we have Raymond Broussard at St. Alphonsus Catholic Church at noon. All right, getting back into our news. Want to take one?
We have an article about the suspended city marshal, a little bit of a continuation on our previous story about the current candidates. Suspended city marshal to be sentenced Thursday, 2018 felony convictions against Brian Pope upheld. This is an article by Claire Taylor. 2 years after a jury found Lafayette City Marshal Brian Pope guilty on 3 felony counts of malfeasance in office, his sentencing date is set. Pope is scheduled to appear Thursday before 15th Judicial District Court Judge David Smith for sentencing. The Louisiana Supreme Court last week refused to hear his case after an appeals court upheld the October 2018 conviction. A jury found Pope guilty on 4 felony counts stemming in part from a videotaped deposition in which Lafayette attorney Gary McGoffin grilled Pope as part of a lawsuit filed over his refusal to hand over public records to the independent newspaper. 3 of the convictions were for malfeasance involving the use of public funds to pay attorneys for personal and prohibited reasons, such as trying to get the divorce file of a candidate for sheriff unsealed and for one for perjury during the deposition. Smith in June 2019 dismissed the perjury conviction but let stand the 3 malfeasance convictions. He sentenced Pope to a year in the Lafayette Parish jail for each of the 3 counts, suspending all but 1 year. He also sentenced Pope to 240 hours of community service and ordered him to pay $11,700 in restitution. Pope was suspended without pay when he was convicted and while his appeals were pending. Pope still faces 19 felony charges of malfeasance in office. 17 of them are for accepting about $85,000 in fines and court fees in 2018 to supplement his salary, despite a Louisiana Attorney General's office opinion advising the money should be deposited into the Marshal's office account. 2 others are related to reimbursements in 2018 for travel on official business, which he deposited in his personal account instead of in the city marshal's office account.
Okay, so moving on. But before we do that, we're not supposed to editorialize or give our opinions on things, but I just have to say, I'm forced to say that this gentleman that we just read the article about, Pope, is again running for office for city marshal. So just keep that in mind, folks, when you go out to vote this coming November. Woman killed in crash on Louisiana Avenue. A 19-year-old woman was killed in a Monday crash on Louisiana Ave. Carrie Goudreau of Lafayette was pronounced dead at the scene after the vehicle she was a passenger in veered into oncoming traffic and struck another vehicle. The crash happened about 6:15 p.m. in the 1600 block of Louisiana Avenue. A statement from a Lafayette police spokesperson, Sergeant Wayne Griffin, said 3 other people injured in the crash were treated at the scene and transported to a hospital with injuries and were not considered life-threatening, the release said. The crash remains under investigation. A New Iberia woman was killed Monday afternoon in a 2-vehicle crash on LA 674 in Iberia Parish. The crash, which occurred about 5 p.m. near Blanchard Road, according to Louisiana State Police, resulted in the death of 58-year-old Solvang Cesareth. Initial investigation by state police revealed Cesareth was driving east on LA 674 when she failed to negotiate a curve. Troopers say she lost control of her vehicle, which then crossed the center line and continued into the path of a westbound vehicle. Since Cesareth was restrained at the time of the crash, she was pronounced dead at the scene by the Iberia Parish Coroner's Office. The driver of the other vehicle was properly restrained, along with the juvenile passenger. The 2 were treated at a hospital for minor injuries. Impairment is unknown, but standard toxicology samples were obtained from both drivers, troopers said.
Okay, moving on to some state news this morning. Louisiana Democrats may back bill to curb governor's powers, an article by Mark Ballard, the Capitol Bureau editor. Among 8 or so measures being pushed by Republican legislators to strip power from the Democratic governor to oversee the state's pandemic response, Democratic legislators could get behind the one sponsored by Senate President Paige Cortez, said Democratic legislative leadership on Tuesday afternoon. When we talk about emergency powers, I think something ought to come out of this process, hopefully, that everybody could get behind and agree with, said State Representative Sam Jenkins, acknowledging that Cortez's Senate Bill 29 is the instrument with which most Democratic legislators are most comfortable. I certainly know we do not need a situation where we manage a pandemic by committee. That just will not work, said Jenkins of Shreveport at a news conference. He is leader of the House Democratic minority. House Democrats noted that halfway through the month-long special session called by the Republican majority legislature, few measures have been forwarded that deal with recovery from the coronavirus pandemic, Hurricane Laura, and the failing trust fund that pays unemployment benefits. That was supposedly the main point of the extra meeting that ends in 2 weeks on October 27th. Fights over Democratic Governor John Bel Edwards' emergency powers have overshadowed efforts by House Democrats to forward legislation aimed at addressing people's needs, more than one representative said. Cortez's bill has passed both chambers, but with different wording. 3 senators and 3 representatives, only one of whom is a Democrat, are negotiating the legislation's final form. SB 29 would create a regulatory framework for legislative oversight when a Louisiana governor extends an emergency order or suspends laws for more than 30 days because of a hurricane, pandemic, or other disaster. The measure would create a 10-member committee of legislative leaders to review emergency declarations that extend beyond 30 days. A week before any extension, the governor would have to notify the committee and the Chief Justice of the Louisiana Supreme Court of what's being extended, the length of the extension, and other details. The committee could hold hearings and seek witness testimony, but couldn't reject the emergency orders. Conservative Republicans, angered by Edwards' continued restrictions on businesses and activities, want to scrap the governor's coronavirus rules now. Cortez's proposal initially didn't give lawmakers other ways to stall Edwards' emergency decisions from taking effect. The House added provisions that set out how lawmakers could negate those decisions. Meanwhile, House Republicans pushed different bills that would lift the restrictions, following different tactics. Republican lawmakers say they want to have several different kinds of measures ready in case the governor chooses to follow the veto route. Among the Republican complaints was that the governor's office hasn't consistently communicated with them about plans concerning COVID-19. Jenkins noted that legislators are included in daily calls updating the pandemic situation. The governor and his staff have reached out the best they could to communicate, Jenkins said. Anything, everything can stand some improvement, but I do not think we should be going to the level as legislators crossing over to the executive branch powers. Those powers are in the Constitution.
Going back to a storm-related story, the storms trigger hurricane deductible waiver. Policyholders won't have to pay twice, by Timothy Boone. The similar paths of Hurricane Laura and Delta have triggered a law that prevents Louisiana policyholders from paying a hurricane deductible twice during the same storm season. We're really glad to have this protection in place, said Insurance Commissioner Jim Donnellan. People who met their deductible as a result of Laura don't have to pay it again if their home sustained damage from Delta or any future 2020 named storm. For people who didn't exhaust their deductible during Laura, the remainder will apply to Delta only if the unused amount is larger than the standard all perils deductible. Donnellan said the state legislature changed the law in 2009 to enact the single deductible per season rule after Hurricanes Gustav and Ike threatened the Houma area a year earlier. Ike veered to the left as it approached the Louisiana coast and ended up making landfall in Galveston, Texas. Louisiana legislatures copied a Florida law that was enacted after 3 hurricanes hit the Orlando area in 2004. It isn't known yet how many people sustained damage from Laura and Delta. Delta made landfall Friday in Cameron Parish, about 12 miles away from where Laura hit the state a little over a month earlier. Getting damage estimates for Delta have been difficult since a number of homes were hit earlier by Laura, Donnellan said. It's a lot easier to estimate damage when a hurricane rips the roof off a house compared to determining how much more an already damaged home was affected, he said. It's a much more challenging claims experience, he said. Analytics company CoreLogic estimates Delta did $650 million to $1.1 billion in damage in Louisiana and $50 million to $100 million in damage to Texas. The company estimated Laura damages in Louisiana are at $8 billion to $12 billion, with less than $500 million in Texas damages. State Farm, the largest homeowners insurance company in Louisiana, with about 278,000 policies, said Monday that 5,120 claims have been filed, along with 590 auto claims. That compares with 7,430 homeowner claims and 750 auto claims in the immediate aftermath of Laura.
And the Lake Charles Health System lays off 205 clinic and institute damaged in Hurricane Laura. The article by Adam Daigle, Acadiana business editor. Lake Charles Memorial Health System, the largest healthcare system in the Lake Charles area, laid off 205 employees recently as the result of damage sustained from Hurricane Laura. Hospital officials notified the Louisiana Workforce Commission of the layoff via a Workforce Adjustment and Training Notification Act letter dated September 28th. The permanent layoffs were employees at the Moss Memorial Health Clinic and Archer Institute, both of which suffered damage from the hurricane and other areas. Archer, a 42-bed facility that specializes in substance abuse and mental health patients, is closed after one of the building's walls collapsed. That building could remain closed for a year, hospital spokesperson Matt Felder said. Moss, which serves uninsured, Medicaid, Medicare, and commercially insured patients, also had significant damage from the storm, he said. Hospital officials also had to evacuate 146 patients when it lost access to the city's water system immediately after the storm. It will take many months to get all of our facilities completely repaired, hospital officials said in a statement. We have no choice but to adjust our basic staffing to meet the current demand of the health system. In the short term, we feel that reprioritizing the organization's goals and consolidating some jobs may help facilitate faster recovery and greater efficiency for the long-term viability of the health system. It is our hope that this will allow us to refocus and strengthen our positioning in key service areas to better serve the post-storm community demographics. The 205 employees were 8% of the pre-hurricane workforce, Felder said. The layoffs from various departments will include 24 licensed practical nurse positions, 16 psych technicians, 15 staff nurses, and 11 patient access representatives. Seniority will be considered as the hospital recalls displaced employees along with other qualifications. As we work to recover and heal, we will continue to ramp up our services, and it is our hope that we can bring back as much of our team as possible in the future, hospital officials said.
Okay, Mandy, we need to make a decision here. It's 9:51, as you well know, and to the listening audience out there, 9:55, our audio shuts off on the TV stations, but continues on our online streaming radio service at Cypress Street Radio and our YouTube station at AOC Community Media. So we have one more regular story to read about Lake Charles schools, and then we have two sports stories. So, Mandy, what would you like to do? Would you like to just go into sports, and I'll take the UL sports story, and you can take the LSU sports story, and then we can call it a day? Or
Sure.
Okay, so let's do that. Let's go on to sports. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay, great. And this refers to tonight. UL will be playing Coastal Carolina. So this is a story about that. It was a game that I don't think was originally scheduled for tonight, but because of all the storm and COVID and all of that, it's been pushed back. But the Cajuns hope to be rested, not rusty, for Coastal Carolina. UL back in action after a long layoff between games by Kevin Foote, staff writer for The Advocate. He usually writes the sports stories. For the first time since a 2018 come-from-behind win over Georgia Southern at the buzzer on September 26th, the number 21 ranked, that's number 21 ranked in the United States of America colleges, folks. The UL Raging Cajuns will hit the field again on Wednesday, that's today. The game is a Sun Belt Conference battle of 3-0 unbeatens, with the red-hot Coastal Carolina coming to town for a 6:30 p.m. showdown on ESPN. Will the long layoff be a benefit or yet another obstacle for UL coach Billy Napier's squad against the visiting Chanticleers, who last played October 3rd in a dominating 52-23 home win over Arkansas State? It's been a blessing in disguise, Napier said. I don't want to make light of the hurricane or what App State was going through from a COVID standpoint, but from a timing standpoint, we stand a little banged up from a football perspective. And then we did have a handful of players that were out doing contact tracing. This is as healthy as we've been since the opener. In general, I do think it's given us an opportunity to work on ourselves. Part of working on ourselves has been getting healthy. UL's announced a depth chart for this contest features a long list of standouts that weren't available against Georgia Southern. Back on offense are Dante Fleming. He's a wide receiver. Offensive tackle Max Mitchell and running back Elijah Mitchell. Expected mainstays to return on defense are defensive tackle Taylon Humphrey, linebacker Joe Dillon, linebacker Chauncey Manac, linebacker Chris Moncrief, cornerback A.J. Washington, and safety Cameron Solomon. Furthermore, running back Chris Smith has been battling an ankle injury throughout the layoff, and he could also play Wednesday. He's getting better, Napier said of Smith's status on Sunday. He's certainly not 100%, but we've got time here, and he may be available when we do get to the kickoff. Although not as long, Coastal Carolina coach Jamie Chadwell, agreed the extra time could help. Gives you obviously a couple of more days of preparations, he said. The hard part was you think you're playing Saturday and it gets moved and all these different things. I think it was actually harder at the beginning of the week because you really don't know with the hurricane. But it does give you a couple of extra days to clean up some things, a couple of extra days to try to get some guys back that maybe got banged up in the Arkansas State game. So it was beneficial. The biggest reason for the improvement has been redshirt freshman quarterback Grayson McCall, who was thrown for 728 yards with 9 TDs and just 1 interception while running for 139 yards and 2 scores. The Chanticleers, though, also sport 3,000-yard career rusher and C.J. Marable. Their concepts when they run are unique, things you maybe don't see week in and week out, Napier said. They've got a whole committee of backs, and I think the receivers have played better. They've taken a step forward. Napier said he's convinced his players aren't consumed by the team's number 21 national ranking and will take Coastal seriously. The film doesn't lie, Napier said. These guys know good players when they see film. They know a team that plays with effort, physicality, a team that has good fundamentals and has a number of variables that can create issues for you. Coastal definitely checks all of those boxes. Napier doesn't want his team to overlook those responsible for Wednesday's showdown being possible in this season filled with cancellations. I also don't think we need to take for granted that we're going to have an opportunity to play Wednesday night because of a lot of hard work by our administration, local law enforcement, and our local health professionals, not to mention all the people that work for all those power companies and the people that work on campus, Napier said.
Okay, our final story this morning, Saints explore playing at LSU. City restrictions are keeping fans out of the Superdome. This is an article by Amy Just. With coronavirus restrictions still preventing the Houdat Nation from attending New Orleans Saints home games in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, team officials on Tuesday met with LSU to discuss playing upcoming games with fans in Tiger Stadium. The move, which has not been finalized, which would allow roughly 21,000 fans to attend the Saints' next home game against the Carolina Panthers on October 25th. Saints head of communications Greg Bensell said Tuesday that the team wants to play their games in New Orleans, but has begun discussion with LSU officials because there has been no indication from the city when or if the Saints' plans to return fans to the Superdome will be approved. LSU has been gracious and enthusiastic regarding hosting our future games, and we very much appreciate their partnership, Bensell said. A move to Tiger Stadium would mark the first time that the Saints played their home games outside the city since the 2005-2006 season, when damage to the Superdome from Hurricane Katrina forced the team to relocate their home games to San Antonio and Baton Rouge. It comes after Mayor LaToya Cantrell, citing both public health concerns and the need for more state funds, has declined to approve an exception to the city's coronavirus restrictions that would allow fans inside the Superdome on game day. On Tuesday, Cantrell spokesperson Bo Tidwell said the city was still considering the Saints' request to have 25% attendance for the Carolina game, but hadn't made a decision. We will continue to monitor the public health data, but cannot set an artificial timeline for how and when conditions may allow for the kind of special exemption being requested, Tidwell said. The question of having fans attend football games has become a point of contention in recent weeks as high schools have begun in-person classes and football, while college sports have also returned. In moving to Phase 3 of reopening, Governor John Bel Edwards allowed attendance at football games with capacity restrictions, and while Cantrell has acquiesced to a small number of fans attending high school football games in the city, she hasn't given approval for the Saints. The Saints have been pushing to have the Superdome at 25% capacity since October the 2nd. we're going to wrap things up there. We'll follow that story as it progresses. I guess we'll see within the next couple of weeks if there will be the return of fans in the stands at football games. It's 9:59. This is Local News Live. We do this every weekday morning at 9 a.m., led by our wonderful group of volunteers. Bruce Cohen, I'm going to let you sign us off this morning, as you always do so well.
Okay, thank you so much, Mandy. Yes, that's the end of our broadcast. Again, like Mandy just said, to reiterate, we do this service every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. for our visually impaired audience in our community of Acadiana Parish. Also, for those who don't get the newspaper or have access to the news cycle, we hope that you listen in so that you can hear what's happening locally. We try to put in all the stories locally and statewide that are important to our listeners. And also we like to give out our public service announcements, which segues me to announce that public service announcements, or PSAs, are free if you're a nonprofit or an organization in the Lafayette or Acadiana Parish that wish to get an upcoming event that you wish to be broadcast. Please send us that information. You can go to ascinc.org, look for the form and fill it out, and we will be glad to read your public service announcement or PSA online during our Local News Live broadcasts. We're also looking for volunteer newspaper readers to become part of our family of newspaper volunteer readers. You can go to ascinc.org, look on the volunteer page, and fill out the form. And Miss Mandy, who you heard earlier, will get in touch with you, and I could maybe even assist you in setting up a home studio, which we've been doing since the pandemic started. And hopefully we'll get back into the studios one of these days. Mandy, hopefully we will.
We shall see. Hopefully things improve.
Yeah, we just have to stay positive. But as I always say, this is Bruce Cohen, will always be Bruce Cohen. I want you to stay safe and healthy and smart, folks. Please stay smart. Just continue with the pandemic protocols. A mask if you're going to be around people you don't know. Just take all the necessary precautions. Let's stop the spread, please. We're all in this together. And as I always say every morning, be kind to each other, and we'll see you on the flip-flop.